Welcome to Homeroom, the podcast, presented by One Church Home, featuring different guests, hosts, and topics focused on building a solid foundation rooted in the Word of God. This podcast was created for those who desire to grow in the will and ways of Jesus. OCH believes in the God-ordained call for believers to commit to their local church. We ask that you would only consume these resources as supplemental and not as a replacement for your local church community. Let's jump into the conversation.
Hey everyone, welcome to Homeroom, the podcast. My name is Lacey Felts. I'm the Executive Director of Music and Media at One Church Home. So happy to be here today with my good friend, Faith Ecklund. She and her husband run a beautiful service on Friday nights. It's a young adults discipleship service and with tons of worship and just prayer, and it's really beautiful. Her husband is Pastor Shane Ecklund, that is a pastor at One Church Home as well. So we're just so happy to have you here, not because you're Pastor Shane's wife, but because you're a worship leader, and we have you on our stage leading with me or just alone with the team very regularly. And it's really because I truly believe, and everyone really believes, that you have a heart of worship. So Faith comes in and she comes into our team and she's bringing excellence with vocals, and just she's a phenomenal musician, and you have that like gospel style thing going on that we really, really love about you. But what at the bottom of that and the foundation of that is every time I've worked with you or worshiped with you or been on stage with you or had coffee with you, you really do, to me, understand what it means to have a heart of worship. And so that's what we're covering in this episode. What does it mean to have a heart of worship? Is it different from just a worship service? Is it a lifestyle? Is it all those things? How far does it go? What world does it live in? And so thank you so much, Faith, for being with us. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with worship?
I'd love to. So I have had the privilege of leading people in song for like the last 20 years, but it's really funny how it kind of came about. So I grew up in church. My grandma played the organ, and so I'd go with her to all these different churches, and they called her Ragtime Ruby. And so like I would like lay underneath the little seat of her like little organ, and I would just be with her everywhere she went. And I never fully understood what she was doing until much later, but I never looked at myself as a song leader growing up with her. That wasn't something I thought I would ever fall into. And Shane and I had been married probably for, I don't know, maybe 2 years. And we were doing a ministry back home in Washington State. And it was a youth group. So there was probably only like 15 kids there, max, maybe. And our guitar player / worship leader didn't show up that night. And we were just sitting there, and Shane looked at me and he was like, "You need to do this." And I was like, "Oh, no. Like, no. I am not doing this." And he was like, "No, you have to. Like, there's no choice." And so I, without any instrument, I just started singing and leading people in song. And it was like the most awkward, uncomfortable moment of my entire life. But that's what kind of catapulted me into learning about how to become a quote unquote worship leader, song leader. You know, there's so many things we could call that. But that was kind of my first embark in that world. And I never turned back. Like I knew in that moment, like, this is something that God has for me, and I need to really explore it. So after that, I just started kind of pounding the pavement and like figuring out, what is this thing? Like, what am I supposed to learn? What do I need to do? And I love learning from people. And so anybody I could like just squeeze anything out of, I would. And I met some really great people, and they taught me great things. And I'm still learning to this very day, but I've done lots of different things over the years, different churches. All sorts of different silly things. But my favorite by far is a small room of folks just going after the Lord together in song, no matter how big the crowd. I've done crowds over thousands, and I've done a room with 2-year-olds. Like, it's all the same to me. Right. And so I'm really grateful to the Lord that He's allowed me this path. But it definitely has not been the easiest in the last 20 years. It's hard. It's really hard, but I love it so very much.
What is your favorite part? Like if you're on the stage, you're worshiping the Lord, you have whatever, to the 2-year-olds or the room of thousands of people. What is it that you just like, what really just ignites on the inside of you about worship or leading worship or just being a part of that experience?
I mean, it's the best seat in the house for sure, because you really get to see what the Holy Spirit is doing. And he allows me to really feel it in the moment. And so looking out into the crowd, my favorite thing is watching somebody just connect, like all of a sudden, to what is being sung out or the words that are being said. You can just see it. You can see when they just kind of fall into a place of, yes, like this is my moment to really be with the Lord. And they just kind of, they just have this release over them. And I love watching that. But my favorite thing is just to listen to the multitudes of people singing the same chorus in one accord. Like it is the most beautiful thing ever. And I will never get sick of that. It's my favorite.
Well, good thing, because as soon as we get to heaven, we're going to be doing it for eternity as well. Right?
Yes.
I want to kind of just get us into what we're actually talking about. I kind of said it before, but we're making episodes here coming up of what is the heart of worship? What does that mean for everyday believers? So I guess my first question to just kind of dive into this is, did you always have a full understanding of what a heart of worship was, what worship meant? How did that kind of ignite or build or grow in your walk with Christ?
No, I had no clue. I had no clue. I have been in church my whole life, and I was saved at a very young age, but I walked away from the Lord in my teen years, and then, came back to him and went to school and did all of the things to learn more about his character and who he is. But I really honestly thought it was somebody singing on a stage. I really just did. Once kind of worship music, CCM stuff really started to take off, which was in my early 20s. I thought that's what it was. And I had no clue that worship actually was a lifestyle. It's not something that happens on Sunday mornings for 30 minutes or wherever. It took me a long time to really fully grasp what worship is. And I still don't fully understand it. It's there's so much profound significance in worship. It literally humbles me and brings me to my knees. And it amazes me because it's so deep. Singing is just one piece of how we get to worship the Lord. And he's allowed me that lane, to help people explore that. But as far as fully understanding worship, it took me really years to understand. And I think it's because I wasn't studying the word as I should have been way back then. Worship is an outflow, singing is an outflow of what's happening inside. And in order for there to be authentic worship, I need to know the word. I need to know who he is and what he's all about, because that's what it's all about. So no, I did not know. And I'm bummed that I didn't know way back then.
Well, I don't think that that's rare. I mean, do you agree that a lot of Christians these days, or maybe, I don't know, maybe always, don't really have, if they haven't studied it, if they haven't looked and dove deep into the character of God, do they really have a full understanding of what worship is? Do you agree with that? In churches just worldwide, do we have a great understanding of that?
I don't think so. I don't want to speak for everyone, but from what I have gathered, you hear people's language. Our Christianese is sometimes way out of whack. We say words without really understanding them. We throw them around, because they sound right, but we don't fully have a grasp on it. And so I've heard people say, I'm going to go worship. Well, that's great. I mean, even back in Genesis, we see Abraham going yonder to worship. That's definitely a thing. But he was doing it not to go sing a song, right? That's the first time worship was mentioned in the Bible. He wasn't going to go sing a song. He was being obedient to what God had called him to do. And so when I hear people say, I'm going to go worship, I'm like, oh man, like, do you really fully understand that? Because it's not, you don't have to go anywhere to worship. Like you can be right here, right now and worship the Lord just based on your lifestyle and the way that you love someone or people or whatever. So I do think that there are some massive hiccups in the way that we use the term. Like it definitely, when we go to church, that's worship for sure. But you don't have to go there to do that. You can come worshiping. That's what we always tell our young adults is come worshiping. Don't come to worship.
Right.
Just get there already worshiping.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw you a little curve here really fast. We were talking the other day about Christian music, Christian radio music versus worship music, worshiping in spirit and in truth, worshiping biblical principles and worshiping vertical worship that's just really talking about and praising and worshiping God's for his character and for who he is and not what we get out of it. What is like kind of your thoughts on Christian music being invited into the church on the stage for worship? Is that for like just positive music during your week, or is it a worship song? I know that's not kind of a blanket statement for everything. I know that there's probably a little bit of both in both camps, but what's your like thought on all of that? Just having like, oh, I really like that song. We should sing that in church.
Right. I mean, that's a
That's a big question.
That's a big question. And I don't know how to answer that fully. I think that with everything, you do everything in moderation, right? I love writing for the church. And I think that we have really amazing people that can write really great music for our bodies that oftentimes we kind of push to the side because we feel like we have to do what's popular, what people know, what they're listening to during the week. And that's not wrong. That's not wrong. But when we just do that stuff, we're kind of minimizing the other thing. And that's where I kind of start to have a little bit of issue with it. Everything is about the heart, and it depends on the words of the song. That's one thing for me I take very seriously is what are we saying in the song? Because we're actually teaching something, and we only have 3 minutes to teach something profound. And if in that song there's like, crazy artsy like words that, nobody can really fully grasp, I have a hard time doing that from a position of leading a song congregationally, because I don't want people to have to interpret it themselves. I want it to be very clear in what and why we're doing it. So I don't think it's wrong to do stuff on the radio. It's just some of that stuff is just kind of for your car. It is like fun and encouraging and those things. But anytime we get into a corporate setting, it should be corporate driven.
Yes.
Like, can we all sing it and understand it and, kind of latch on to the theme or whatever that is. So again, it's not wrong. It's just, is it right?
Well, I've had a couple different people come up to me as a worship leader and say, hey, I really love that song that you did, but they do like a country version on the radio. Can you do the country version? And I'm like, do you see pickers on the stage? Like, who's going to play that mandolin part? Like, we need more volunteers, honestly, if you want that version of it. But I think that kind of mindset of I want it to be my style, or I like this better, or, music in general. And this podcast series right now is not just, we're going to dive deeper. It's not just about music and worship, but as two worship leaders, like it's kind of going to pour over a little bit. But having so many options in the just general music industry of pop and country and rock and, vintage country and like all the different things that people grab onto and go, hey, this is like me. Their identity is like sometimes set in the type of music they listen to. And I've also known some people that was like, Christian music is my thing. The Christian radio stuff, that's my thing. I don't listen to anything else. And so they really desire or want to see that in their churches as well, in their corporate worship setting, because it's music that they already love and know all the lyrics to. So I guess out of that kind of, I'm sure that's happened to you before, people are at doing song requests, like you're a wedding singer or something like that. Not as wonderful as that sounds and as fun as it sounds to just be like, hey, yeah, let's try this new thing and this and this and this. It is the worship leaders should be desire and their job to kind of go, hey, what we're going to sing is biblical, word focused, spirit and truth, worship music. It's just a little bit different than what just your taste is or this or that. So out of that, going into just what I want to hear from you, what is and isn't worship? Can you break that down for us? Can you tell us, can you call it out? What are the things that we can go, oh, that is worship, this isn't worship?
Yeah. In music, you're talking about?
Well, just in general, I know a lot of people, don't really understand a heart of worship. So to them, worship is when the lights come on a stage and the first keys of the keyboard with the first chord is played, we've started worship.
Totally.
So why isn't that enough?
Yeah. So I love Warren Wiersbe is one of my favorites. And he says this, he quotes this: worship is the believer's response of all that they are, mind, emotions, will, body, to what God is and says and does. So coming into an environment where there is music, depending on what church you're going to, there's a style, right? That just is what it is. You kind of fall into a style based on where you're going. And again, that's great. That's wonderful. But we have become so consumer driven as Christians that if they're not playing it the style that I like, then I'm out. But if we understand that worship isn't the song, and we understand that worship is actually a lifestyle, and it's my response to the Lord because of how good he is for his characters, his characteristics, and the word, right? It's the word. If we come into it with that and not being consumers, then the style really doesn't matter to me because it's all about him. And so I think too often we just put ourselves in front of it. And so we want to be, we want our ears to be tickled. We want to like it because we want to evoke an emotion. And emotions aren't wrong, but emotionalism is. When we are driven by the way it's going to make me feel, that's when it's wrong. But of course, songs are going to evoke emotion in us. It should evoke emotion in us. That the Lord created.
It's one of the beautiful things about it. Yeah,
totally. So style is never going to fit our preferences completely, no matter what. It just won't. We're all different, and that's what's so beautiful. And so I feel like style doesn't necessarily matter as long as it's not distracting. You don't want to go into a service and have it be distracting, because what our job is to set a tone so that people can remember, they can reflect, they can go, I've had a really crummy week, and I just need to realign my focus. That's what we do, is we help people realign their focus together as one body. And that's such a cool thing. And so I'm guilty. I'm so guilty of going into a place and going, oh, that is not my jam. That's not it. That's not it. Because I love gospel. I love big sound. It just moves me to my core. Big vocals. I love it so much. But again, if I remember this is not about me, this is actually my gift back to the Lord, then style just kind of goes out the window.
So when you just said, it's not music, it's not that, it's a lifestyle. What does that look like when we're not in church and you want to functionally put a name to? What does that mean? A lifestyle? Is that we're singing at home now, or tell us what that actually means when you mean a lifestyle? So
I have a really good example. I think it's a good example. It might not be. Let's see if it is. But I was in a restroom one time, and I was by myself, and there was nobody in there. It was at a pool, at my mom's pool. And I had dropped something on the floor, and it was like paper or something. And I was just about to go out my merry way. And the Holy Spirit convicted me in that moment to go back and pick it up and throw it away. And I was like, why? Like, it's a dirty bathroom. I don't want to put my fingers on the floor. And so, but I listened and I was like, yes, sir. And so I went back and I picked it up and I threw it away. Nobody saw me do that. Nobody watched me do it. But in my heart, the Lord was saying, somebody has to do that. And you're the one that made a mess. Pick it up. And I just thought about the end guy, like the one that does have to come in and clean it up. That's where my heart went. That's worship, because I was being obedient to what the Lord was telling me in that moment. And I was loving the last person really well, not even knowing who they are. Maybe I'll never meet them this side of heaven, but oh, what a day it will be when I get to tell them, I picked up that piece of paper in the bathroom before you had to go clean it up. That's so fun to me to think about. Like, it's just silly, but that's worship. So it's not singing that is in of itself worship. That's just something that, like singing corporately, that's something we get to do together. But a lifestyle is, what am I doing behind closed doors when nobody's watching me? Am I still listening to the Lord, being obedient, obeying what his commands are, and loving his people well? That's worship. That's how we worship always.
I love that. We say this a lot at One Church Home when we're, it's the portion of the service where we're going to give our tithes and offerings to the Lord, and be joyful givers together. We always say, like, we're going to continue in worship here with our offering now. So it's really, and that's a big piece of a lifestyle of worship, is I'm committing to giving back to the one who gave to me first. What is owed to him, his worship is what I want to give back to him. His everything that he's given to me, even if I gave it back nonstop at all times. And it was a lifestyle when I'm sleeping and when I'm awake and when I'm dreaming and when I'm working and when I'm, chilling out or with friends or out to dinner. If I'm doing it nonstop, that is a lifestyle, and it's still probably not going to be enough, because he's just so worthy of his praise. Is that right?
He's totally worthy.
Yeah.
And it's like such a hard thing to do, because we're human and we falter and, we make mistakes and we're sinners. And sometimes I'm not worshiping the Lord in the way I respond. Like, let's just say to Shane one time, like, I'm like,
oh, you got fight sometimes?
Just a little bit, just a little bit. But it's, that is a piece where I'm not worshiping the Lord, because it's an attitude of my heart. Right? That's what worship is. Praise is another word, I feel like, that kind of gets thrown around, praise and worship, right? Like, we hear that a lot in the lane that we run. And praise is thanksgiving. It's using your mouth. It's saying out loud, like, I adore you, I honor you, thank you. Like, it's actually using your mouth to do. And so we think sometimes praise is like the upbeat first song.
I was just about to say that.
It's like, praise song.
It's the big up tempo. It's the first two songs. That's our praise songs. Yeah. I had a worship leader tell me that. I was on their team and he was like, no, these are the praise songs, and then these are the worship songs. I was like, I'm so confused.
It's so confusing. But that's totally what people think is a tempo. And it's just not a tempo. Psalm 104 says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. And that word actually is translated songs of praise. So we're commanded to do this, right? And we're commanded to sing. We're commanded to do these things. And so I just think it's funny, because we tend to misuse those words based on the tempo of a song. But we can praise all the day long. We can use our mouths to do this. Yeah. But worship is a little different. Worship is an attitude of the heart. And so it's like, I look at it like this, like, praise is easy, because it's like, I'm just going to use my dog as an example. I'm like, good boy, like, you're so good. Like, and I pet his head, right? Yeah. And then I go about my time. But worship is hard, because when things aren't going right, when I'm not in a great mood, or like, I'm grieving something that happened, my heart posture is still to obey the Lord and give him what he's due. And that's really hard to do. Praise is easy. Worship is hard because it's an all day, every day kind of thing. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. Before we close out this episode, I want to just get a short answer for you as we dive deeper into what is a heart of worship. What can you leave us with so that we can dive in deeper on episode 2?
Man, I would say that I would love for us to really understand that there's things that the Bible talks about with worship. There's words that we can learn in the Hebrew. And they carry these connotations: bowing down, falling down, service, labor, making, inquiring, seeking, fear, awe, ministering, supplicating, asking, prayer, those kinds of things. I would just say that we have a lot to learn. That I would love to leave people with. Singing is wonderful and it's a beautiful thing and we're commanded to do it, but that's only one way. Like there's so many other things that we can do to worship the Lord minute by minute, day by day, without having to be in a song service.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Faith, so much. We'll see you in the next episode.
Yes, girl.